morning, everyone. Congratulations on holding the 15th Korea World Ocean Forum today. And I thank you very much for your invitation to this cruise session today. I am from the Minato Research Foundation, a foundation related to the Ministry of Land Infrastructure, Transport and Tourism of Japan. I am the Deputy Director General of the Japan Cruise Research Institute, Saburo Tanaka. Today, since you gave me this valuable opportunity, I'd like to address you by giving you some introductions on resuming Japanese cruising under the COVID-19 pandemic. Now, to begin, I'd like to talk about the dawn of cruises in Japan. Now, cruising in Japan began in 1989. So in the 3 years from 1989 to 1991, 7 cruise ships were built and 8 cruise ships went into operation. At that time, many maritime shipping companies were booming, and many shipping companies, as an important part of the shipping industry, have newly entered the cruise ship business. The company on the right-hand side here is an owner of a cruise ship and a leading company in Japan. A company operating cruise ships and international ferries in 1990 established the Japan Overseas Passenger Ship Association, which is a landmark establishment and a major event for the cruise industry. Next, I'd like to introduce the Japanese cruise ships currently operating in Japan. 33 years, as a matter of fact, have passed since the first year of the cruise, and through 3 cruise ships are in operation in Japan. All 3 ships are rather small-scale luxury cruise ships. Nevertheless, they have continued their business for more than 30 years by taking advantage of their respective strengths, and their company management in the midst of COVID-19 was rather stable. But as Corona reached its peak, the business situation has become somewhat unstable. But I believe that the cruise business will resume and recover, and sound operation and management will persist in the future. Next, I'd like to talk about the procedures involved in resuming Japanese cruising. Now, domestic cruises in Japan have resumed through the following steps. First, formulation of infectious disease response guidelines by the industry. Second, creation of a ship infectious disease response manual for shipping companies. Third, implementation of infectious disease response training by shipping companies. Fourth, acquisition of infectious disease response certification by third-party organizations. And fifth, but not least, examination at the Cruise Ship Acceptance Council at each port of call. So these 5-step procedures, the Japanese cruising business has resumed. Next, I would like to introduce the chronological order in resuming the cruise business. First of all, last February of last year, there was a massive outbreak on the Diamond Princess. And come March, uh, cruise ship operations were suspended as the WHO issued or declared the onset of a pandemic. And in May, the Japan Ocean Passenger Ship Association announced the guidelines for ocean-going passenger ships, including international ferries. And in September, the Japanese Cruise Ship Association announced the guidelines for the three domestic cruise companies. And in October, with the announcement of the guidelines, the Japanese cruise ships resumed domestic cruise business. Approximately a year has passed since the cruises have resumed, but few cruises were able to operate during this period, and most of the cruises were suspended. Why were the cruises canceled once again after a brief resumption? Well, there are two major factors. First, the spread of the pandemic in Japan has restricted the behavior and movement of people, forcing us eventually to cancel or suspend cruise trips. The second one is that we offer cruise trip offerings while observing the rules to prevent infectious diseases, but there are few passengers who actually wanted to go on such cruises. So, with diminishing demand, we had no choice but to cancel the cruise ship operation. Now, why did the customers leave? Well, one of them is that the outbreak on the Diamond Princess did not leave people's minds, and the anxiety about cruise trips could not be dispelled. Secondly, although cruise ship operations have resumed, the ports that can be called on and the number of crew days have been limited. So the appeal of cruise travel products has also diminished, which has contributed to the slump in attracting customers.
Now I'd like to talk about COVID control measures that we impose on board for cruise consumption resumption. First of all, cruise lines, the three major Japanese cruise lines, they focused on three principles. Number one, to prevent initial infection. Second is to avoid contamination. And third is to avoid spreading of the disease. For this, cruise travelers are required to observe the following. Number one, health check prior to and during the boarding, vaccination, and separation of passageways and aisles. We also have taken measures to prevent onboard infection with social distancing, as well as hand sanitation, mask, and ventilation. So these are the measures that we have taken. We also provide the training and education for crew members. And we also set up the rules for behaviors in destination. We have also come up with measures to respond if any kind of outbreak occurred. So cruise ships were resumed with all these measures. So the cruise lines have implemented very comprehensive, meticulously devised preventive measures and finally resumed the operations. Yet still we have a long way to go before we see full-blown recovery. So in that sense, I would like to ask for your support and understanding.
さて、日本国内クルーズに続く
Let me now talk about the prospect of the resumption of international cruise.
現時点では国際クルーズ
Currently,
再開
it is
は
still not clear
見通しは
whether
立
we
っ
can
てい
see
ない
the
ということで
resumption
あり
of
ます。
international cruise in the future.
まず日本船のバージン船業はどうかということについて見てみますと、
For Japanese
来年
flagship
3月に
cruise ships,
アスカ2による世界一周クルーズが
around the
予
world
定され
cruise
ています
for
が、
ASCA 2
現在
is
のとこ
scheduled
ろ
for
実
next
施できる
March,
かどうか目処が立ってい
but
ない
it's still
と
not
いうことで
clear
ありま
whether
す。
we can really proceed
ま
as
た
scheduled.
アスカ2以外の
And
特に
aside from
全て
ASCA
の
2,
国際クルーズは発
no
表されていません
outbound
ので、
cruises
ア
from
スカ2
Japan are
今年
announced
3月の世界一周クルー
for
ズが始ま
resumption.
るということが日本船の国際クルーズ再開の大き
And
な
no one knows
要
for
因
sure
になってまいります。
whether the ASCA 2 around the
次
world
に
cruise can really
外
be
国
resumed
籍
next
ク
year.
ルーズ船の場合はどうかということでありますけれども、
And
まず
also
世
for
界旅
foreign
行会社
flagship
から
cruise vessels
来年3月以降
bound
も
for
日
Japan,
本寄港予定が多数入って
many
いますが、
cruise lines have
日本
established
の水
the
際対策
schedules that call Japanese port
検疫手続
after
き
March
が
next
どのような
year,
か、これ
yet
について現
uncertainty
時点で
lies
は
with
決まっ
immigration
ていない
procedure.
状況で
It's
ありま
still
す。
not clear how immigration and
さらに
quarantine
国
procedures
際クル
will
ーズの
be
中でも
changed and
日本だ
unfolded,
けではなく近隣諸
and
国、
also
ロシア、
the
韓
international
国、
cruises are
中
affected
国、
not
ベトナ
just
ム
by
など
immigration measures
水
in
際対策
Japan,
の
but
対
by
象につい
other
て
neighboring countries,
それぞれの
including
日本の
Russia,
対応
Korea,
を
China,
把
and
握していない
Taiwan,
状況であ
and
ります。
therefore it's still not clear
この
what
ように
response measures these
日本船
countries will
そし
launch.
て外国船における
And
国際クル
therefore,
ーズ
as you
が
can
い
see,
つ
because there are a
再
lot
開
of
できるのか
uncertainties,
ということに
it
つ
is
いては
difficult to
全
predict
くの
when
見通しが
international
立ってい
cruises
ない
bound for
状
Japan
況で
can
あり
resume
ま
their
す。
operations.
次にコロナの現状だけでなく少し遠くを眺め、これからコロナ後の韓国
And while we are
日本のクル
struggling
ーズ
from
船営について
COVID-19, I believe that we have to take a long-term view, and in this sense, I would like to propose the idea of linking
日本韓国の
cruise
国
ships
際ク
for
ルーズ
Korea
であり
and
ます。
Japan. So the first proposal that I would
韓
like
国
to
には
make is the
年間
archipelago
に
cruise for
それ
Korea
ぞれ
and
海
Japan.
洋国にするという
Korea has beautiful
日本には
archipelago marine park
瀬戸
in
内海国立
Jeollanam-do
公園が
province,
ありま
and
す。
Japan does have the beautiful
両
marine
国とも
park in Seto
郷
Inland
土料
Sea.
理が取れ
Both of
たてに
them
してい
have
る
beautiful
特に
scenery,
海が
and
取り寄
people
せ
are
た
struck with
船
awe
の
when they
景
see
色は
amazing seascape
誰
from
もが
ships.
感動するクルーズの海域であります。 こ
So
の海域について
these could be
両
very
国
good
の政
destinations
府関
for
係者
cruise
が
travel.
協力し
And
て
if the two local
他国から
governments
のまさし
cooperate
くクルーズを
and
造成
create
し
cruise
世
programs
界の
linking
中
the
ずに
two
減らしたら
archipelago
良い
parks
と
of Japan and Korea
この素晴
and
らし
propose
い
that
国
idea
際
to
クル
global
ーズを
cruise
世
lines,
界に
I believe
紹
that
介
this will
し
be a
世界の
phenomenal
各国
idea.
から多く
So
の
let's
旅客をこ
introduce
の
these
海域に取り
beautiful
寄せましょ
archipelago cruise
う。どう
programs
ぞご理
and
解のほどよろし
attract
くお願いいたします。
travelers and cruisers all around the world.
2つ目の提案は
Next
オー
idea
ト
that
マ
I
チ
would
クル
like
ー
to
ズです。
propose is the Northeast Asia
この
cruise
オートマチクルーズ
program.
は昨
As you
年
can see from
2020
the
年
slide,
6月に実施予
this is
定
the
だった
promotional leaflet
アス
of
カクルーズ
the
の本格
Costa
変更で
cruise
す。
planned for resumption June last year.
そのクルーズは COVID-19 の
However,
影響で
because of
分割中止となりました
COVID-19,
が
this cruise
韓
got
国の
suspended,
ソウルポハン
but
日本の福岡舞鶴金
the
沢
cruise lines
そし
have
て
come up with a
ロ
new
シアの
programs
ラ
that
スベガス
sail
を
Sokcho and Pohang in Korea, Fukuoka and Maizuru and Kanazawa in Japan, and Vladivostok of Russia. So 3 countries for 7 nights and 8 days, and sailing the same routes for 4 consecutive times. Many people welcomed this idea and look forward to the resumption of this cruise program. So it was very regrettable that it got canceled at the last minute. As you know, the East Sea in from spring to autumn, it's very calm, just like lake, and therefore it provides the excellent destination for cruise travel. And we want to come up with even greater idea in the future and introduce the beautiful seascape of Korea and Japan to cruise travelers around the world. Last but not least, I would like to talk about a exciting news that the Usan Cruise Line that operate Asuka 2 in Japan, they recently announced a plan for a new build shipbuilding, and the shipbuilder is the Meyer Belfort of Germany. So the total tonnage of this new build is pretty large, whereas the number of passengers are pretty small, meaning it will be the vessel with great comfort, and also this is the future-oriented, environment-friendly eco ship mounted with the engines that can accommodate 3 different types of fuels. So truly, it's a future-oriented vessel for the era of decarbonization. And this vessel is going to make a debut in year 2025. So far, I have talked about the resumption of cruise travels in Japan, and I would like to thank you for your attention. Let us cooperate and work together toward the renaissance of the Northeast Asia cruise. Thank you.